Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Dungeon Lore series. In this series, I hope to explain the origins of each dungeon in Final Fantasy XIV, and maybe expand a bit on things you might not know. This episode's dungeon is the Thousand Maws of Toto-Rak, the 4th main scenario dungeon accessible within the game. The Thousand Maws of Toto-Rak, named after a ferocious creature with Pajali naming conventions, was until recently a large underground prison for the criminals of Gridania. Once a new prison was built closer to the Gridanian homeland, the underground tunnels were ordered to be abandoned by the elder Seedsir Kan A. Senna. Before the calamity, Thousand Maws was generally accessible to most adventurers. However, due to the high etheric presence within the dungeon, they were only permitted entry for a short time. Currently, the Wood Whalers of Gridania stand guard outside the entrance, as general entry permission is disallowed except in special circumstances. Adventurers, between their potential journey through Halatali and defeating Ifrit, Lord of Embers, begin building a cordial relationship with the Sylphs, the leader of whom has gone missing. After helping Buscaron in South Shroud with some tasks, including outing a Wood Whaler gone traitor to Garlemald, the Sylph leader's location is discovered to be within the Thousand Maws itself, as the Sylph Elder was fleeing from more Imperial soldiers. Approaching the dungeon, adventurers are requested to found a search party to delve into the abandoned prison to help discover the whereabouts of Frixio, the lost Sylph leader. As the party begins proceeding into the tunnels, they will notice quickly that the architectural style of the area seems to be very similar to that of Tamtara, suggesting these tunnels may also be of Gelmoran origin, backed up somewhat by the Pajali names shared by both places. Almost immediately, they notice collapsed tunnels that may previously have extended the area further still. The dungeon's main inhabitants include general beasts such as Terox and Puddings, along with beetles and Muntoi saplings. One of the first things the party will encounter is an old, water-stained note attached to an old bulletin board upon the wall. There are several of these notes strewn throughout the dungeon, detailing the report of one First Spear Rydell, presumably of the Wood Whalers of Gridania, who was sent out along with an unnamed technologist from the Ashcrown Consortium, and a reporter for a Gridanian newspaper known as The Raven. On the first note, we can see that Rydell noticed several strange lights hovering inside Toto-Rak, thought to be creatures originally, but on closer inspection they are revealed to be the Magitech photocells, small green orbs presumably used for gathering energy, similar to a plant. Past this point, the party encounters a fork in the road, where heading left brings them to the Abacination Chamber, used during the time of the prison for sentencing and trialling the criminals to be held within the place. Heading the other way, deeper into the tunnels, the party collects one of the photocells, glowing green near some of the foliage growing nearby. Just past this, the second note left by Rydell hangs on the wall. This note shows that the Whalers observed a dramatic increase in the light emitted by the photocells after collecting a total of 4 of them. Rydell had sent 2 soldiers back to research the cells they collected, however received a link pearl call shortly after stating that the light in the cells dimmed the further away they got from the prison. The party then reaches another split path. These paths are reasonably mundane, however the inner path contains more Magitech photocells, while the outer path moves out to the edge of the man-made path of Toto-Rak, travelling past the deep, thick roots of the trees of the Black Shroud. The outer path also leads to the third and fourth notes from Rydell, the third detailing how a Lancer attempted to disable a Magitech field presumably left by the Garleans, and that the Ashcrown technologist guessed there must be something powering the barrier, and therefore a way to disable it. He also begins to think that his team is discontented with his leadership, but puts it down to his imagination. The fourth note shows that they located the required device that powers the barrier, and that the technologist suggests using 4 of the collected cells to attempt to disable it. Rydell is also shown potentially becoming obsessed with his mission, as he notes a missing Lancer team but decides to press on through the tunnels. The party at this point, having collected enough photocells themselves, arrive at the Confession Chamber, where upon attempting to input the cells into the Magitech terminal, an Ochu appears, a curl of 9 tails, and attacks the party, calling its allies and poisoning everything within its reach. Upon defeat, the party reattempts and successfully manages to disable the barrier. The party continues on, and the tunnels steadily become more grass covered and contain more of an eerie glow from the nearby plants. Heading further down the tunnels, a handful of photocells generate themselves from defeated enemies, which are collected again by the party. One thing that's worth noting is that after his fourth note, that is where Rydell's recount seems to end, as the last three notes seem to have been in tunnels now inaccessible due to the calamity, or natural cave-ins. The fifth note detailed his discovery of a sheer drop of several yards in one of the passages, and that a rope climb down should be possible, but notes that the technologist is slowing them down, and the return trip may be difficult. He also sends some of his now diminishing team as scouts to find an alternate exit. The next note reveals that Rydell discovered the bodies of the missing team from earlier, laying mangled and broken at the bottom of the drop, and that the scouts lost contact with him. We can see here his slow descent into losing his mind, as he presumes them lost or deserted, but yet still continues with his mission. The seventh and final note told of several lancers reporting breathing issues, like a thick cloud of something was blocking their lungs, about how two more disappeared into the darkness of the dungeon, screaming all the while. And finally, how the technologists attempted to warn Rydell of the extreme levels of etheric energy now present around them, causing Rydell to think him a Garlean spy, even showing how the elementals warned him of his treachery. The note ends with Rydell noting that the Garlean worm is now dead, and that he feels all the better for it. Back with the party, they continue through the tunnels as normal, defeating more plant-like enemies, ochus and muntai saplings, to a point where they begin encountering large webs and egg sacs, the webs even pulling unaware adventurers through them and trapping them from their fellows. Here the enemies the party encounter begin to change dramatically. Whereas the majority of foes were plants and general beetles and beasts, the party is now inundated with diamites, where pressing on from here lets them only encounter more. At the second Magitech terminal, the party rounds up the required photocells and again places them into the device, causing yet another Ochu to appear, similar to the last. One thing of note for the rest of Toto-Rak is that there are several cells named after presumably infamous criminals. The first the party encounters is the cell of Bergen the Brogan. Not a lot is known about Bergen, and in fact I couldn't find much at all outside of simply his name. The party continues round the corner, where they start to encounter thick green ooze upon the floor, slowing them as they proceed through another large web formation. Here the party starts encountering the fleshy pods, large cocoon-like formations of webs containing things as yet unknown, although as the egg sacs of the diamites are strewn elsewhere in the dungeon, it's reasonably safe to assume that this contains something more sinister. Just after this, the party passes another named cell, that of Sir Oshiforn of the High Tide. There is more of a mention of this particular criminal, as in the past he was known to be attempting to extort the populace of Limsa by being part of a scheme that involved him purchasing a near full stock of rye flour from the capital, hours before the main source from the farms of the brewery burned down, leading to Oshiforn attempting to sell the flour at a hugely inflated price. Proceeding on through the ooze, the party sees another glimpse of the tree roots of the Shroud. However, this time the light flowing in from above is an eerie pink-purple opposed to the greenish glow from earlier. It is not clear what this means exactly, however it may be safe to assume that the etheric levels in the area are somewhat more unstable, for as we can see from Rydell's notes, they used to be extremely high. The frequency of diamites grows and grows here, showing they have fleshed out their living space more and more since the calamity and the abandoning of the prison. Fighting their way through more ooze, along with more webs and several fleshy pods, the party then passes by Jokil Halfmore's cell. Jokil is also reasonably unknown, however we do know that they were an archer, as Hawk Manor seems to house a bow that was presumably his before his incarceration. Once more fighting through more and more ooze, the party eventually reaches the entrance to the Abacination Chamber. This chamber was used for torture in the time of the prison's active state, particularly that of holding a hot piece of metal over one's eyes, with the intent to punish them further than just the pain. Fighting through a final web trap and more diamites, the party reaches the Abacination Chamber proper. Now, this is just a quick warning, but as you might expect, there will be spoilers following this for the MSQ, and there will be for future videos as well to help explain things. I'm going to let this cutscene play out in full. It's about 2.5 minutes long, but let me know in the future if you'd rather me speak over it instead or shorten it, etc. It's just these parts of the early Realm Reborn dungeons often have very, very important things happening.
Darkness.
Elko hitra bublo hans. Seastapon Rajiadorn. Thagon Welrog. Tosan Opaiki. Mayhap I might if I deign to speak in my guest crude tongue. We meet at last. I am Lahabrea of the Asians, servant to the one true God. Yours is a most fantastical tale, truly absorbing. It is a tale to tell Eorzea's children before bedtime, and it will soon be dark, bringer of light.
The Dark Minions.
All that stands between this world and darkness is an irksome anomaly in the ether. The Echo. Yes, yours is a most fascinating tale. Alas, like all good tales, it must needs come to an end. But fear not.
Here, feel the presence of evil.
For the end of your tale is but the beginning of another. The tale of the crystal's demise.
Lahabrea of the Asians, a minion of the dark god Zodiac, is extremely intrigued by the adventurer's ability to possess the Echo, a power bestowed from the ether, and notes that your tale is a most fascinating one, having slain Ifrit. The Asians serve as the main antagonists for the most part during the course of the story of all of Final Fantasy XIV. He bestows heavy ether onto a nearby Violkin, causing it to grow and attack the party wildly. During the fight, the Diamite's tail grows and places large puddles of poison, while around the arena many fleshy pods reside, exploding upon close contact. The party can attack the tail to cause Graphius to become vulnerable for a while, at which point they can fully focus on him to defeat him. Upon defeat, Graphius falls and vanishes, with Lahabrea nowhere to be found. After the dungeon, Frixio, the Sylph Elder, explains that Lahabrea seemed to be intending to feed him to the Violkin the party just felled, and is extremely grateful. That brings an end to the lore of the Thousand Maws of Toto-Rak. A longer excursion this time, due in part to the lengthy cutscene with Lahabrea, however I hope it was an interesting experience. Honestly, I originally had no idea that Lahabrea even showed up in this dungeon, as before now I had skipped a lot of the Realm Reborn MSQ. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel for more Final Fantasy XIV dungeon lore, and I'll see you next time for Hawk Manor.